Hey YouTube, it's me Amin here bringing you a Brawlhalla Legend tier list for Autumn slash patch 8.14 2024. We're only going over legends because you can only play as legends in the game. You can't play as a single weapon. So I'm only doing legends, and this is for 1v1 because I don't play 2v2s at all really. So let's get started. I've divided the tiers. I don't go by the letters S and A and all of that because the characters are pretty well balanced for the most part. I'd rather just divide them up in near perfect tier, which means there's hardly anything wrong with them. They have great stats, great sigs, decent weapon combination, that kind of thing. And then excellent is just like they're just really good, but there's probably better options, and so on and so forth. And you notice that the lowest tier is okay, meaning that you can still use them and get 2400 with them, but once you get to 2400 and onwards, then you're probably going to see some minor issues that you're going to have to compensate towards in order to get Valhalla. So let's get this going. Okay, now I'm just going to choose some middle ground legends just so that we can get a foundation for the tier list. And starting off, I am going to put So yeah, here's some great legends. Nyx. I'm choosing Nyx first because Scythe is a really good weapon. Blasters is an okay weapon, but she's just very difficult to use, and ease of use is a big factor to this as well. So Nyx has forgiving stats, high defense, high speed, low strength, pretty good stats for Scythe. But the issue is Blasters and Scythe together, you're going to have to play really well in order to make up for the low damage potential if you can't read your opponents. And it can be hard to land your hits sometimes. But the Sigs on Nyx is good. Her weapon combination is alright. And her stats are good. So she's just middle of the road there. I can't put her as an excellent or a near perfect character just simply for the fact that she just requires too much skill to use. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you're good with Nyx, you can accomplish a lot with her. She has downlight and sig on blasters as an unjumpable, and it spikes really hard. You have Sidelight and sig on Scythe. Pretty solid. It's just ease of use putting her in the middle there. Now, let's see. Okay, Diana. The skill intensive characters I'm going through right now, because they're probably the most intricate to explain for now. Diana, I would probably put just behind Nyx. Like, bow and blasters together is pretty similar because it's mostly about stringing weapons, stringing stray hits together and then getting reads. But like bow and blasters, they can compensate for each other because you can always get kills on both weapons with the D-light into something confirms. And Diana has the bow downlight into N-Sig unjumpable and it spikes really hard. But same issue with Nyx, even though decent stats, decent SIGs, actually really good SIGs. It's just that she's really hard to use because the blaster SIGs require a lot of planning and forethought before you can just use them. The bow is really good. Just for the carry potential of bow, I'll probably put Diana above Nyx. But Nyx and Diana have the same issue where they just require a lot of skill to use properly, and if you don't have the skill to properly play both weapons at on top of your game at all times, you're probably going to struggle in going past 2400. Okay. Okay, let's get something obvious out of the room. Queen Nai is just an okay character. The reason being is that you can't have more than 4 speed. She's base 3 speed, so that's a really big issue right away. You're probably going to get gimped pretty easily. I mean, spear and guitars are both good weapons, and she's good for trading, but like all it takes is a good gimp, and then you're done for if you're Queen Nai. She has downlight end sig on spear, that's good. Her sigs hit hard, but her sigs are a little bit slow at times, especially for the guitar side sig and end sig. And the spear down sig is kind of telegraphed. But other than that, she's just an okay legend and is just really hampered by low speed, making her very bad off stage. And that's kind of a disappointment because her weapons are kind of good for off stage too. So she's just an okay legend. Okay. On a similar vein, Amugi is a base 3 legend. But the thing is, he has better SIGs. And his stats, although just as bad as Queen Nai, makes up for it because, again, the SIGs and also his weapons complement each other rather more better than Queen Nai. So I'll just put Amugi at good. But he still struggles with the same main issue as Nai, where he's not that great off stage. But other than that, if you can read with his greatsword, you're probably gonna shred stocks really quick though. So that's why I put him above Nai, but below the other characters so far. I haven't been playing much of Mugi's lately, so I don't have much other opinions besides that. Okay, Volkov. Volkov is just a good character. Debatably, probably better than Amugi. Because at least you can go to 5 speed, even though that kind of stinks. And Scythe really needs the speed, but Volkov's Scythe SIGs are just really good. His axe is also pretty fast too. Like really, Volkov has everything, almost all the good things about Nyx and more, but you have worse stats. So that's kind of why Volkov is here. And on a similar vein, stats dragging someone down, we got Magyar. I'll put Magyar behind Volkov because low strength and low speed is kind of a bad stat distribution, but it probably doesn't matter too much because on greatsword and on hammer you're probably playing more patient anyways, and you don't need to run around and you'd rather just wait for them to come to you. But still, though, getting gimped on Magyar feels so terrible because you can live a lot longer, but if you get gimped on Magyar, it just feels really bad, and that's why he's here. His Magyar SIGs aren't their SIGs. Magyar SIGs aren't that great to start with because really you're only fishing for down sig on greatsword and the occasional side sig on hammer, but otherwise the other sigs are rather expectable, so there's not much surprise factor there. Okay. We're going kind of the more less obvious characters first to get them out of the way. Now Zariel is surprisingly an excellent character because you've got just the right amount of speed. 5 speed is not bad. And you've got weapons and SIGs that are very good off stage, and most of the SIGs combined with the kit are very good for spiking enemies down. So if you like playing off stage and you like to live long, Zariel is such a good pick, and the SIGs are really easy to use too. And Zariel isn't that hard to pick up, but Zariel still has a pretty high skill ceiling, and a low skill floor, so Zariel's just a good main to play overall when you're if you like any of his weapons or his sigs. I mean, there again, there. My mistake. Okay. And and I want you all to know too, Zariel probably has my favorite gauntlet in the SIGs in the game. Like neutral SIG gets you back, side SIG has great range and great force, and down SIG just hits all around. Now, let's see. Okay, Casty. Casty kind of suffers the same issue as Queen Nai, but you can get 5 speed, but then you'd have 3 defense, which is even worse. But 9 Dex hammer and blasters is pretty good, and she has crazy hammer sigs. So I would put Cassidy probably ahead of Volkov. Like the down light into N sig lasso on Cassidy's hammer is just so good. The side sig on hammer is good. The down sig on hammer is more of an edge guarding tool, but that's still fine. The blasters are easy to use for the sigs. She's just a good character, but you just have to work with her stats, that's all. Similar to Volkov's issue, work with the stats. Okay. Okay, Yumiko. Yumiko is a character that has a really good SIGs, because you have the down SIGs that let you trap and get free true combos, but like she has low defense, so that's a pretty big issue. But like you have good mobility, and if you can play with good spacing and movement, you can thrive on Yumiko. So I would put Yumiko in the great column, just in between Nyx and Diana. She just has low defense, but aside from that, the down sig on hammer is amazing. The side sig on hammer is good. The neutral sig on hammer is good. Side sig on bow is good. Neutral sig on bow is okay. Down sig on bow kind of stinks, but it fulfills its purpose just fine. Bow and hammer complement each other well. Just a solid character with low defense, that's all. Now, you probably don't see a lot of Thors every day, but I'd probably put Thor in the great column. It's just simply because I just find Thor's orb sigs to be kind of sluggish. Like, he got nerfed too hard in the old patches long ago. I'm just putting him in the top of great because he has just such good stats for surviving, and his weapons complement each other well because orb is good for stringing damage and lots of hits, and hammer can confirm kills. And stomp Ensig on Thor, I believe, is true, and Thor's hammer down sig is obnoxious. Like, Thor is more of a hammer legend instead of an orb legend. Like, the only reason Thor's not up there with Zariel is because Thor's orb is just kind of lackluster compared to most other orb kits. But if you want survivability with decent strength, and you want weapons that complement each other, Thor might be something to try. Okay, Reno. I would put Reno. Yeah, this is like a reoccurring trend, is that most blaster characters are probably not going to end up in the excellent tier just simply because they're difficult to use, right? But Reno's kind of special because Reno has good SIGs on both weapon kits. And the stats are not half bad. So surprisingly, Reno is a strong contender so I would put him in the top of great. Like the blaster neutral sig on Reno reaches so high up, and the side sig on blasters covers so much ground. Down sig is good for edge guarding and setting up for gimps, and neutral sig for orb is good for setting up gimps, kind of like Diana. And like you can do sidelight and sig unjumpable too. The down sig is just a free sig, just an alternative to side sig. So like yeah, Reno's a good choice. It's just that not many people play him because I'm assuming they don't like orb and blasters together. I'm assuming. But still, the weapons complement each other rather well, though. Okay, let's see. Azoth. I would put Azoth in the excellent tier because having bow and axe together is just way too good of a combination. You can cover everywhere, and you have lethal hitboxes almost everywhere too. Like axe can kill right in front and above, and bow can kill stacked and above. And like Azoth has all around balanced stats if you take speed stance. His end sig on axe greatly compensates for the down light hitbox nerf where you can't hit axe down light grounded anymore. So axe neutral sig hitting grounded and hitting aerial with absurd force is a godsend for axe now that down light got nerfed. And the bow sigs, they have really weird active frames that catch people off guard even in high rank. Now, I'm just putting Azoth right behind Zariel because the only reason is just because Axe Side Sig on Azoth just requires too much thinking and planning to use. But other than that, Azoth is a great choice. Okay. Now, Vector, I've spent quite a bit of time playing some Vector, and my opinion is that he's a great character if you can work with his SIGs. He's the kind of character where everything is perfect about him, but he has weird SIGs. Let's see. I would put you. Yeah, I'll put Vector right above Yumiko. I mean, don't get me wrong, Vector has a good bow. Down sig on bow hits stacked and in front and in the back. And side sig covers good ground. Neutral sig is a good string ender off of downlight if they have no dodge. Great damage. But like, when you compare signatures, Diana has a better bow and can do it better than Vector. And his lance is really just a weird reading tool. Like playing Vector Lance is like playing Kaya Spear. You don't play Kaya for the spear, you play Kaya for the bow. And that's kind of like for Vector. You want to play Vector for the bow because it's the best SIGs, but at the same time, there's characters that do bow better than Vector, so that's why you don't see a lot of Vectors around. But the best thing Vector has going for him is that he has very balanced stats, arguably better than Moridex stats. Like you can take any stance on Vector and it would be good. But the big issue is you're probably gonna have to take a lot of getting used to use Lance side sig and Lance neutral sig on Vector. But if you can get that down, Vector is a go-to character if you like completely juking people and getting wins that you probably don't deserve if they were focused. Now, but let me tell you though, Vector's Lance off stage is sleeper. But let's move on. Okay, speaking of Lance characters that have issues, we got Thea. Now, Thea is a great character, The sigs on both weapons are amazing, but you have low strength and you have even lower defense, and that's not a very good combination for a character to be good. And unfortunately, Thea's probably going to be put at the top of good tier. So, like, she's probably the best of the lower half kind of character. Like, she starts off with 3 defense. If you play defense stance, you have 3 strength, and having 3 strength, 4 defense, that's like 3 plus 4, 7. That's actually worse than taking strength stance and having 5 strength, 3 defense for 5 plus 3 equals 8. Like, you'd rather have the ability to get kills and be killed quickly rather than hardly getting kills and still getting killed normally, if you get what I mean. But like, Thea's down sig and side sigs on both weapons are amazing, and neutral sigs are just good spacing and recovery tools. So if you can work with the defense, then Thea is debatably the Cassidy of Lance, if you get what I mean. And not to mention, the 9 speed does come in handy when you're trying to pull off quick 0 to deaths too. So if you can pull stuff like that off, Thea can thrive. But if you're not very good at reading and doing offstage clips and all of that, Thea's probably not worth it. Now, on to Bryn. On the same vein as Azoth, Bryn's Axe neutral sig is so good. As for Bryn, her Axe neutral sig on Bryn is just so amazing. Compensates for the weakness of downlight for Axe after the nerf. Hits grounded, hits aerial, has good force. Not only that, Bryn has debatably better stats than Azoth, but you also have solid sigs for both weapons, but Bryn is still behind Zariel because you still have a weird sig. Axe down sig for Bryn. Like, it's so slow. I mean, it hits hard, but it's so slow that you're probably not going to get any utility out of it besides maybe like a really epic whiff punish. Like, your opponent just whiffs a highly, end leggy move, and then you just do that and then they die. But other than that scenario, I see no use for Axe down sig. So that's why I put her behind Azoth and Zariel, because not only that, but I personally think Bo is more well-rounded than Spear is, albeit by a minute margin, but still though. And Zariel's bow downsig, going back to Zariel as a comparison to the Azoth and Bryn comparison, Zariel is put higher because you can get usage and mileage off of every move on the SIGs easily. Like, even bow downsig on Zariel, you can use it off stage, and you can use it as a dodge in read. So there's that. But Bryn has a solid weapon combination, and like, if you practice, you can get Spear neutral sig on Bryn to hit grounded, and that's like her fastest sig, which is amazing. Like, there's a trick to Spear neutral sig on Bryn. Like, you notice how when your character, they hold the head of the spear backwards, then they have the hilt and the handle pointed towards the enemy, right? Like, all you have to do is just have the partially of the hilted handle into the character's sprite, and then you're probably going to hit neutral sig. But that's very niche, and it's probably not going to pop up often. But still very a big indicator of why I respect Bryn so much. Okay. Now, on the same vein as grounded SIGs that hit, we got Arcadia. Now, Arcadia, amazing SIGs for both weapons. The weapons compensate each other okay. They don't really compensate, they more like complement each other. Because Spear and Greatsword both struggle killing, but they're both very good at ranging and poking. She has lower defense though, so I would put Arcadia behind Diana. Like, Arcadia is the kind of character where if you're good with her weapons, you're gonna thrive, but you're just there's that issue with her. And this issue is not that she's not too hard to use, but it's more rather you have to deal with the low defense. The stances on Arcadia are kind of weird. Like you're kind of expecting, oh yeah, let's take away from Dex and we'll get speed, right? Because she's 4 speed, 4 defense, 7/7. But you're stuck with 7 Dex, 6 strength, 4 defense, 5 speed, which is not that good. Like that's base dust stats, which is not that good. But you have to put up with it if you want to play Arcadia because that weapon combination is really good for like the drifting Sayers and like the pogos with both weapons. And with Yumiko, just like Yumiko, you have down sig. But like you just have to work with the defense. And arguably we're probably gonna have to move her below Yumiko because at least Yumiko has better weapon synergy. But both NSIGs on Arcadia hit grounded, and they hit pretty hard, so there's that. And she has a projectile on Greatsword side SIG. But other than that, it's just the stats dragging her down, that's all. Speaking likewise with stats dragging someone down, we got Ada. Now Ada, debatably a really good character, but base 3 defense going up to 4 defense is kind of rough. And you have blasters, which means you're gonna have to play really well. You have amazing spear sigs, and you have pretty good blaster sigs. Blaster side sig in particular hits hard and is rather quick. Blaster end sig, offstage gimp galore. And you have downlight into end sig unjumpable that spikes super hard on spear. Like, Ada is, you know what? We have to move Ada up higher. She just has that nuance that makes her like a Diana for spear. Like, that's insane. So Ada is just right here above Yumiko because although she has better blasters than Diana, debatably, the defense is what puts her lower. Even though she has the spear mini game going on, just like Diana's bow. Like, that's pretty much the only issue. Okay. More characters with stats dragging them down. We got Dusk. Dusk kind of like Arcadia. Both solid sigs on both weapons, but you're stuck with low defense. But Dusk hits harder than you'd expect. So I'm just gonna put him right behind Ada, because although he's more of a jack of all trades for both weapons, while Ada's more spear oriented, Dusk doesn't do either weapon as well, except maybe he's more orb oriented, I suppose. The orb sigs are amazing to hit off stage, and sig hits grounded. But aside from that, you have less speed to maneuver, and you have the same defense technically once Ada goes defense stance. So technically, it's kind of like I would put Ada and Dusk on even footing on this tier list, but I just have to put them in a specific order, so I did that. Like Ada's NSIG combo with downlight string or whatever is the only reason why she's above Dusk. But don't get me wrong, Dusk is a pretty good character, but you have to deal with the defense. And that recurring theme with defense, we got Jiro. Low defense, but he has Nair on Scythe. Nair on Scythe is a really good asset. Like, you can get free damage on it, but the low defense is really bad if you make any mistakes, and then you have to prevent a snowball lead from your opponent, which is annoying. I'd probably put Jiro above Arcadia, but behind Yumiko, because Sword complements Scythe really well. But Jiro, you have to rely on a signature to hit hard, and he can't take many hits. But he's still a solid character, so we have to put him here. And if you can land a Sword Sig, good for you. You made your life a lot easier. Downsig on Scythe is pretty solid too. That's a really big thing I have to say about Jiro. Like you can zone pretty well with that. Okay. Speaking of Nair Seer on Scythe, we got Moonin. You can go Dex Stance, and then you'd have identical to Jiro defense stats. And then you can do Nair Seer on Scythe, but on the upside you also have Bow that can work quicker off stage now too. But like Moonin doesn't hit as hard as Jiro, that's the thing. Bow and Scythe are kind of like very similar weapons because they kind of do the same thing. They cover the same areas, but they don't really have different things to offer. So it's like almost like picking two of the same weapon together. Moon and Sigs are good, but they don't hit hard. And you can opt for defense stance and have balanced stats, but then you're missing out on Nair Seer on Scythe, and you're still not hitting that hard anyways. And honestly, the gap between 4 and 5 defense doesn't matter too much when you're the one trying to press the advantage. I'll put Moonin above... Yeah, I'll put Moonin above Yumiko, but behind Dusk. You know what? Moonin does Scythe really well, above Dusk. Moonin's a great character, but it's just that you don't have like the oomph to the character. You have to figure out what can compensate for the lack of force and damage and firepower, and then you can be all set with Moonin. Like the Sigs cover great areas. Downsig is great for zoning, good for edge guarding for Scythe. Bow Downsig is just a free thing to throw out and get kills with. Neutral Sig on Bow, outclassed by Koji. Neutral Sig on Bow hits wider, but also outclassed by Vector Bow. So pretty much you got spamming Downsig on Bow and a solid Scythe kit, but that's pretty much it. Like the Scythe neutral sig on Moonin is sleeper because it's kind of like Mordex. You can just string it off of Sidelight. But that's pretty much all to cover about Moonin, because Moonin just doesn't hit hard enough when you need to hit hard on those weapons. But seeing as how you have Nair Seer on a character that has more string potential with the Sigs, I'd probably say better off than Jiro. So if you like Jiro's gimmicks, but you want it on a less basic character, like more diversity, go with Moonin. Okay. Let's see. Okay, and speaking of Dex combos, we got Vrax. Vrax has downline neutral light on Lance at 9 Dex, which is why I play Vrax a lot lately. But like Vrax has some glaring issues, and it's mainly that he can't hit that hard, and he can't take that many hits. But like if you got the download on your enemy and you can land downlight often, and you can play blasters if you happen to be stuck with blasters, and you can manage that, then Vrax is a good choice. But those stats though, it's just what's keeping him behind is because the limitations of stats in Brawlhalla. I'm just gonna put Vrax above Thea. Like Vrax and Thea are kind of like neck and neck for like the gimmicky Lance characters. I mean, debatably, Thea's down sig does the job much better than Vrax's down sig, but like Vrax has a much better zoning tool with Lance neutral sig, and he also has the downlight neutralite combo. I mean, Vrax's blaster end sig hits grounded, and that's pretty decent. But like, don't get me wrong, you're probably not going to be wanting to be on blasters when you're playing Vrax. So that's why I'm putting Vrax in the good tier. But I'd probably consider him and Thea to still be at the bottom half. Okay. Okay, we got another high dex character, Lin Fei. Lin Fei's pretty much in the same vein as Thea and Vrax when they're just really, really bloated on dex. And unless the dex really benefits them in a huge way, then if it does, then great. But if not, then it's probably not worth it. And as of right now, Katars doesn't really have too much on 9 decks. So I'm probably going to put Lin Fei down here in between Thea and Casti because at least Lin Fei has the speed that has it over Casti. And the SIGs on Lin Fei are pretty good. Like, you got N-Sig grounded on both weapons. And the down SIGs are good for offstage. It's just that you have to work with the bad stats, like low strength and low defense is a big issue for these 3 characters. But otherwise, they're really fun, though. Okay. Okay, is there any... Oh, yes, how could we forget Ember? A low defense character. Okay, sorry for that. Ember is probably... You know what? Ember is higher than Lin Fei. You know what? Yeah, Ember's probably at the bottom of the great tier because her weapons are rather similar to each other. They don't really help each other too much, but they're just really good if you want to play similar weapons, kind of like Moonin. But Bow Ensig on Ember hits grounded and hits aerial, and it's good zoning, good read option. It really carries the kit. But honestly, the low defense is just basically the same issue as Ada, but you don't have as many confirms off of Ember's SIGs, so that's why she's not high like Ada is in the great tier. But in terms of raw string potential and ease of use in neutral, Ember has it made though. So don't count her out for that. Okay. Okay, another low defense character is Jala. Now Jala used to have downlight Ensig on Sword True, I believe, but I think they patched it out so that it's only one window now, which is kind of a bothersome thing. Because that's what really made Jala really special, but now I think with that gone, Jala's not too great anymore. But Sword and Axe are pretty easy to use and dependable weapons. The signatures, though, that's where things get tricky, because the other SIGs are amazing, but the side SIGs on both of Jala's weapons are just so sluggish, like, terribly slow. And that's why. That's surprisingly the only reason why I put Jala below Ember. The other SIGs, amazing, especially Sword down SIG and Axe down SIG. But otherwise, rather disappointing. But if you prefer ease of killing and ease of building damage with good practice, Jala is still a good pick. Like, pretty good pick, but not super great. Now, on to Barraza. Barraza's a weird one. You don't see much representation for Barraza besides Cody Travis. But when you do, you can see the strengths of Barraza being that you can build up damage with both weapons rather well, and you can confirm with both weapons rather well. But it's just that the weapons are a slower pace, so it's easier to play around them if you have time to breathe. But likewise, Barraza has solid stats for trades. So I would put Barraza in the great tier and just you know what? I'm putting Barraza above Diana because Barraza's blaster sigs really good, somewhat better than Diana's. They hit hard, and he surprisingly has a really interesting interaction with his axe neutral sig, where your opponents are just always on edge when they're trying to approach you when you're near the corner. And you can land that off of reads too, like the straight gravity cancel neutral sig on axe can hit more often than you'd think. So Barraza's kind of like the axe main kind of guy if you want to go for like those crazy strings that are confirmed if they have no dodge and can get early kills. And down sig on blasters kills pretty early even despite the nerfs over the years too. Okay. Mirage. Mirage is a character that I've been picking up a lot more recently because she's just really fun to use, and she's dependable, and having high strength on spear is just icing on the cake when you want to go for extended downlight strings on spear, and you can kill them in orange. But she suffers from low defense though, and that's the only reason I'm putting Mirage right here above Ada, only because of the premise that you have higher strength to make up for the low defense. I mean, don't get me wrong, with Ada, you get downlight Ensig as a confirmed string that spikes. But Mirage, you don't have that. You don't have that luxury, but your 8 strength makes up for it because now your sidelight, downlight, Sarah, and recoveries are just hitting much harder. So it's almost the same thing in a way. And not only that, but Scythe, Ensig, and Spear side sig and Spear neutral sig, they just kill really early and they hit super hard. Like, here's the thing. Say you hit your opponent, and then you're trying to figure out what to do next. With Ada, you can fish for the Ensig combo or string. But with Mirage, you can just adapt. And then if you land a stray side sig on Spear, they're just dead the same way. But on the other hand, you have extra strength to help you win neutral and benefit longer. So there's that interaction, which is something interesting to note about. And Mirage's Scythe Sigs have gotten nerfed too much ever since Sandstorm started picking her up again recently. So that's the only reason why Mirage can't be higher, is because the Scythe Sigs have been getting more end lag lately, so that's kind of annoying. Okay. Now, of course, what kind of tier list would it be without Mordex? Mordex is an excellent character. Because the stats are really good, you can go any stance pretty well with Mordex. The weapons are pretty similar, but different enough because they offer different coverage areas. Gauntlet's more vertical and horizontal, Scythe more diagonal. But they do a similar function of being read heavy and being fun to play. So Mordex is just up in the excellent. And all of his SIGs are good. Yeah. Mordex is leading the pack in the excellent right now. I don't have much to say about Mordex other than that he's really well rounded. And like, if you can read, then you're gonna dominate with him. Okay. Loki is kind of a different kind of pick compared to Mordex. Now Loki, you're kind of doing the similar thing, but replace gauntlets with guitars. You're still playing reed heavy. You're still playing really fun weapons, but you have a really niche aspect of the game that you don't have with Mordex, but you do with other nuances, and that's the Nair Sair combo on Scythe. Because 7 dex, 5 speed, that's barely enough to do Nair Sair on Scythe true. And Loki can do it. So Loki is really interesting. And seeing as how I did not play Loki too much, and not many people are playing Loki, Loki is kind of uncharted territory right now. So I'm just going to put Loki right below Zariel. Like, the only reason being, you're sacrificing stats for dex, but you get Nair Sair on Scythe. But, like, the guitar sigs on Loki are not that intimidating to me, so that's why I'm just putting him there. He's a great character, though. Excellent character, don't get me wrong. If you're good with either weapon for Loki and you want to win, just play Loki. Like, 7 dex is good for guitars, too, not just Scythe. And the side sigs on Loki are just too good to pass up. And another bonus for Loki, side light and sig on Scythe, unjumpable. Neutral light and sig on Scythe, unjumpable. You don't have that flexibility in a signature for string reading with any other Scythe, so take advantage of that. You know what? You're ahead of Zariel just because of that. Good on you, Loki. Okay. Okay, Caspian, you got 2 reed heavy weapons, and you've got hard hitting sigs, and you've got balanced stats. So what's the catch? The catch is you're probably gonna struggle in long range engagements with matchups, especially against Spear. But if you can overcome the matchups, Caspian is a great pick. Yeah. I'm gonna put Caspian. Yeah. This is tough. It's much harder to categorize a placement in tier based on matchups rather than actual flaws. So I would put Caspian. Man, where would I put Caspian? Okay, we'll put Caspian right behind Vector because they have different sides to the story. Vector struggles with SIGs. Caspian struggles with matchups, but that's literally the only thing going against them. So that would be a more respectable way to put it. Because putting next to Moonin, that's like a huge step down because Caspian has great SIGs and great stats. And that's kind of like a different league per se from top of great to bottom of great. So I'll put that as a baseline. Moving on to Ragnir. Ragnir is a great character. Is he an excellent character? His stats are pretty well balanced, but it's probably so balanced that you kind of wish that he had a bit of an outlier in his stats. Like, sometimes you wish he'd have less dex and more strength or defense, if you get my drift. So that's the reason why I'm putting Ragnir at the top of great, because he can't be excellent because his stats aren't excellent. Everything's just good about him, but nothing is great about Ragnir. Like, in order to be better than the great tier, you have to have everything good and a little something extra, and then you'll be excellent. So Ragnir, just all around a great character. Great spiking SIGs, solid SIGs, even in neutral. quick string heavy weapons that can still kill when you need to. I mean, Katars debatably can kill when you need to just from a simple read or a stray Sair or a stray recovery or nair. So there's that. Okay. Sidra. Okay, Cannon is kind of uncharted territory for me because not many people play Cannon, but at the same time, I don't play Cannon much. But Sidra is literally the bane of my existence. And every time I fight a Sidra, I know that I have to respect all of Sidra's options if I'm going to make it through unscathed. Sidra is just so well rounded that I'm just going to put her at the top of great. Like, sword and cannon, you can do anything with those weapons, and the sigs make up for it too. In case if you want some more explosive potential that can get you wins from nowhere. Like, don't get me started on Sidra's anchor or cannonball. Like, you get hit when you don't expect it against Sidra. So if you like doing cheeky things, Sidra is up your alley. And honestly, every stance is great on Sidra. Although, you're probably going to have to know Cannon pretty well to really take advantage of Sidra's kit. Now, let's get the cannons out of the way then. Zol. Now, Zol hits like a truck. I mean, if you can land his combo stars, you're guaranteed 30 plus damage every hit. So that is something. That's something special right there. And Zol. The only issue I see with Zol is that he's just kind of sluggish, which means you'll probably lose in neutral if you don't know what you're doing. So he's kind of in the same issue with Barraza, where he's kind of sluggish and slower paced. But he's worse than Barraza because he doesn't have the gimmicky X neutral sig like Barraza. Like Zol's X neutral sig is more for stealing gims rather than real gims. And the other sigs are kind of sluggish. So yeah, I put Zol behind Caspian. Nope, behind Mirage. Behind Moonin. Okay, Zol is ahead of Dusk. There we go. Yeah, like big damage, big force, good weapons to land straight hits with. But a glaring issue is that his sigs just aren't really like his sigs just don't seem that broken. That's probably the best way to put it. If you can land side sig on cannon, then that's gonna kill obnoxiously early. But aside from that, and aside from taking advantage of active frames on down sig on cannon, there's not too much else to be worried about for Zol. So I'd have to put him in the lower spectrum of great. Okay. Now for Onyx, another cannon. Onyx has really good sigs, but it's just really hampered by the fact that she got too many nerfs over the years. Like her down sig on Gauntlets used to be a bane to many players, but now it's just so sluggish that it's telegraphed. But at the same time, you have to respect Onyx because she can get back to stage so many times that you probably lose track. Because high defense combined with Sairs that can get you back through movement in the move, it's just really good. So I'll put Onyx higher than Vector, but below Diana. Because at least Diana's been getting buffed, but Onyx is getting nerfed, so that's why kind of the exchange in power there, if you get what I mean. Okay. Any other cannons? Oh yeah, 7. I've also been playing 7 a bit more recently, since I've been getting into the groove with Spear more. But 7 basically has ridiculous stats, excellent for trading, and the SIGs are manageable. Although you have to you have to do some micromanagement with making sure it's the lightning or the flames when you're playing 7. And you have to swap it with downstig, which means you have to have some breathing room in order to do that. But aside from that, if you can work around that, 7 is up your alley if you want to be able to survive and dish out decent damage. Like, it feels like 7 is kind of like what Queen 9 should have been. Now, is 7 great? Definitely. Is 7 excellent? Not really, because you're really sluggish if you miss an attack. And that's 7's biggest flaw, because with low dex characters, if you miss an attack, you're just that minute split second is easier to punish compared to other characters that with. So I'll put 7 in front of Diana, but behind Barraza. Like, just that slower pace character, but with modern mechanics. So that's why 7 is up there with Barraza. Like survivability and damage all in one. That's 7 in Barraza right there. Okay. Isaiah, another canon. Now, Isaiah is a character that I've come across in ranked quite a bit, and I've formulated an opinion on him now. And it's just that he's a great character, but there's nothing overly too special about him. So, he's great, but like, he's not too special. He's got blasters, which means he's hard to use. And yeah, similar issue as Nyx, slightly easier. Sigs may be better subjectively, but yeah, it's kind of debatable between Nyx and Isaiah, but Nyx just has more confirmed, so we'll have to go with Nyx above Isaiah. Because on top of that, you also have more speed with Nyx. But Blaster Ensig on Isaiah is such a great asset to Blaster's kit, so that cannot be understated. That's the reason why he can never be pushed down any lower. Okay. Moving on. Let's get some more obscure characters out of the way. We got Sentinel. Sentinel's kind of like Vector. No one plays him, but he has amazing stats. But placing him above Vector is that he also has amazing sigs. I would consider Sentinel to be in a similar vein as Thor, but better than Thor, because Katar's is probably better in neutral than Orb is, for the most part. And like, the signatures are just easier to use. I mean, Ensig for both weapons hits grounded, so they're obnoxious, and like, literally the only mediocre sig for Sentinel is side sig on Katars. The rest is really abusable. Yeah, that's my thought on Sentinel. Okay, Olgrim. We see you know this. We see tons of Olgrim in ranked. Olgrim, great character. Is he an excellent character? He's just shy of being so. Because the reason is, his sigs are just kind of telegraphed. That's literally the only thing wrong with Olgrim. His sigs are telegraphed. Other than that, he's a great character. I'll just put him in between Sentinel and Thor. I mean, back when Olgrim had his N-sigs on both weapons hit grounded, but it got patched out, ever since then, I can't really put Olgrim as an excellent pick anymore, just sheerly through that. But ease of use, Olgrim is so easy to use, he's just a dependable pick when you just don't know what else to play. so that he has that as his main thing going for him. That, and also you can tune his stats however you want to, and having 7 strength, 7 defense, 5 speed, 3 dex on lance and axe, you're gonna be a thorn in someone's side for a very long time in a match. And that's something that you can't really pass up if you want to play Brawlhalla. So that's why Olgrim's in the top of great. Top 5 great. Okay. Onto a rather obscure character, Ezio. I'm really surprised not many people play Ezio, but when I do see people play Ezio, they're really good. Like Ezio, it's like having 2 similar weapons, but you don't really have anything bad about them besides maybe Orb's downside being lackluster. But aside from that, solid character. I'd probably put Ezio in front of Diana. Like Ezio's just kind of like in the middle of the better characters. I mean, you still get unjumpable strings off of sidelight Ensig on Orb, downlight Ensig on Sword, and both weapons are just really good at almost anything. You can't go wrong with Ezio. Okay. Speaking of jack of all trades, we got Bodvar. Is Bodvar an excellent pick? No, because he has a similar issue as Ragnar where you're like, dang, I wish this guy had less dex. Then he could have better stats. And that's literally the only thing holding Bodvar from being excellent, is that he could have much better stats and then he'd be like from here to like here. But since Bodvar, if you take minus dex, you get 7 strength and then 5 for the rest. That's like Scarlet speed stance, which is not too outstanding. But then again, if you want neutralize the sidelight true on hammer, you gotta stick with the 6 dex, so that's probably the function for Bodvar. But I consider Bodvar right behind Sidra because they're kind of almost on equal footing, but Sidra just has a higher skill ceiling with cannon that can explode with epic reads. But Bodvar is just more of a foundations and basic level character. But if you can do it well, then you'll succeed. So like yeah. And don't forget, Bodvar's sword downsig is obnoxiously good, so don't forget that. Okay. Okay, Jae-yun. Jae-yun, solid stats, solid weapon combination, solid sigs. I mean, Jae-yun's sigs, they're either good or they're obnoxious. And his stats are amazing. Minus dex goes for 7 strength and you still got 6 speed to maneuver with. Like, I would put Jae-yun right here. Top 3 character so far. That's not hard to debate. Okay. Okay, Orion. Orion, he's just a really good spammer character because the SIGs are just really good to use and it's easy to land with. But like, there's not too much depth to the character unless you go for reads more often with Orion. But the reads are kind of basic for the weapons. The stats balanced could be better, could be way worse. SIG's good. It's like you're using 2 of the same weapon though. That's like my biggest complaint with Orion. I main lance and I main spear, but having them together, it just feels so redundant. Like that's why I had to force myself to branch out to other weapons besides just lance and spear. But Orion's sigs, you can always count on them. Sidelight into end sig on. Okay, scratch that. Orion is a really good spear character. You can go sidelight into end sig unjumpable on spear, and you can go downlight into end sig unjumpable on spear. So I literally just uncovered something that people never should have uncovered, but we'll just spill the beans right now. You probably won't find a better spear when you want to spam signatures than Orion. Like it's almost like, oh, you got everything you want from Ada plus more. But except it just spikes straight down instead of diagonally, so you just have to carry them over there. So I would put Orion just behind Ragnar, just behind Bodvar, but ahead of Ragnar, because it's just there's just so much room to counterplay due to the lack of depth to the character. But otherwise, he can be a real big annoyance when you are low on patience in this game. Like his sigs are just fast. Okay, let's get another spear out of the way, Kaya. Kaya. You don't play Kaya for the sigs, really. You play Kaya for everything else. But she still has a pretty good bow kit. I put Kaya at the top of great. She's not excellent because her signatures just aren't easy to use in neutral. That's literally it. Everything else about Kaya is excellent. She's just got that holding her back. Her sigs aren't spammable. That's it. You know what? Bryn doesn't deserve to be higher than Kaya, right? No, Axe is easy to use and it's really good. So that's kind of debatable there. If Kaya would be up there, she'd be up there with Bryn. But the signatures aren't as intuitive to use, so we'll put Kaya here. Kaya's just really good at surviving and just chip damage. And then if you fall for a spear read or if you get hit by a stray bow end sig, well then it's just bye bye, and then you gotta deal with a snowball problem now. Now moving on, another popular character, we got Taros. What can I say? Despite nerfs, Taros is still a threat. Is he excellent? No. He's not excellent. He's the threat, but he's not excellent. Just simply because his weapons are so redundant that when you do need some variety to your gameplay, that you need to mix things up, then that's where you start to falter if you're Taros. Like, you gotta stick to your game plan and you gotta stick to it well. If you have to change game plans on Taros, then you're pretty much. That's pretty much like conceding at that point. It's just hit hard with heavy weapons. If you can't manage with heavy weapons in that particular game, well then, GG's. But likewise, if you can succeed with his weapons, then you're probably gonna roll people. I'll put him above Orion, behind Bodvar, because Bodvar has sword to mix things up. But Taros' stats are nothing to be trifled with, so there's that. Core, low speed, but you can get him like Azoth with speed stance. But Gauntlets and Hammer, although they complement each other well, matchup wise, they lose to so many diagonal weapons like Bow and Scythe, though. But at the same time, your offstage gameplay is nearly unmatched. I put core. Not to mention your sigs are good too. I put core right there in between Onyx and Diana. You don't see cores very often anymore. But core is pretty scary if the opponent knows either weapon well and can use the sigs well. And core has a really nasty habit of surviving, and then when you try to confirm the kill, they just give you. So there's that. Okay, Tezka. Okay, going into more boots. Tezka's definitely an excellent character. And I dare say he's in the same vein as Mordex and Loki because his stats are just so good. Just take strength stance, perfect amount of dex, perfect amount of strength, and all you need is a good read, and then your opponents are pretty much getting screwed. And his off stage is great too. Like you can't go wrong with Tezka. Okay. Fate. Yes, I've dabbled in some Fate, but Fate is not really cracked up to be what people really expect of Fate because she's not really as powerful unless people sleep on her, if you know what I mean. If you expect Fate, then she doesn't have as much of an impact. But if you don't expect the Fate, you're in for a rough time. Like she's kind of like a zoner Mordex if you get the drift. I'll put Fate right here. She's a great character, but she's not excellent because she just has some matchups that are tough. And like when you can telegraph, like if you can tell when your opponent's, like if you can tell when the Fate player is gonna end sig, then that really takes out the threat level that a Fate can dish out. Like don't get me wrong, Fate's a really good character, but if you know when the sigs are coming out, you pretty much just prolongs the game enough where you can mount a comeback. Now let's see. Okay, Cross. We don't see many people playing Cross anymore now that Boomy's not playing as much. But Cross still has amazing stats. The SIGs are alright, and the weapon combination is solid. But Blasters is still hard. I put Cross probably in the same vein as Caspia. No. 7 and Barraza. Like, just good characters to play slow with, but the bonus with Cross is you got Gauntlet so you can speed up when necessary. And Strength stance on a Cross is pretty solid. Tons of damage. And Blasters with 8 Strength is amazing. You know what? I think I might have to put Cross higher because you can also have the flexibility to go speed stance too. Yeah. Cross is above Reno, believe it or not. Like you just have to work with the wonkies and the old SIGs like Gauntlet down SIG, like the grabbing zoning SIG. And like the SIGs got nerfed over time, but they're still good enough. So yeah. You got that going for you. Vivi is undoubtedly the best blaster character just because her signatures carry her a lot. So she's an excellent character, but you just have to know how to use the weapons and then you're set. The stats, really good. You can go high strength and that's so good for both weapons. Like, Boots Ensig hits grounded. Blaster's Ensig on Vivi hits grounded too at the end. Like, the reason why I make a big deal about SIGs hitting grounded is because it just opens up an extra avenue where you can land the hit, so then you're less likely to get punished for it. And, like, you get a projectile with VV2 on side SIG on boost. Like, that's weird. Like, weirdly good. Red Raptor. Red Raptor is debatably in between Bodvar and Sidra because he's better than Bodvar because surprisingly I consider the extra diagonal coverage to be better because you have more approach options that are harder to respond to for many weapons. And also, Red Raptor's Orb side sig carries the kit really well too. And Boots End sig, don't get me started. But the issue is, he has stats that are just kind of odd. Like the higher dex is kind of annoying. But other than that, great character. He could do well with less dex. That's literally the only thing holding him back. Okay. Rayman. Yeah! Okay, Rayman. Rayman's a great character. Balanced in everything. Weapons are pretty good. He can basically turn into Mordek's defense stance. But I mean, Rayman probably struggles against Katars a lot. Like, that's the only thing I can say about him. The matchups. If you can deal with Bow and Katars, then you're set with Rayman. And he's the only character that has so much freedom of movement for his down six for edge guarding too. Yeah, the foolery, his foolery puts him in the same tier as Sidra. But maybe slightly worse because Axe got nerfed. That's literally it. His Rayman's Axe sigs don't compensate nearly as well for the other Axe legends that I mentioned because his end sig on Axe is kind of slow and doesn't hit grounded. That's literally the only thing holding him back from excellent tier. Okay. Mako. Okay. Mako's a great character. And if you feel like playing a faster movement based greatsword, Mako might be up your alley. And having Katars as a backup plan is surprisingly good. Okay. The SIGs are great. Active input on the Katar end SIG. Yeah, I would put Mako just behind Ragnar because Ragnar just has more versatility, but Mako's got more more movement capabilities. That's what I was gonna say. Okay, Petra. I consider Petra to be a more aggressive version of Fate. So we're gonna put Petra here. The only reason we're putting Petra behind Fate, though, is just simply because Orb and Gauntlets together lose to Katars more easily. Like, that's the only thing holding her back. And she may struggle against Spear, too. It's just matchups. Everything else, solid. Okay, Val. Val is kind of got the same stat spread as Nyx, but she's easier to use, and her SIGs are more intuitive. I'd put Val above Bodvar behind Red Raptor. She's not as popular as she used to be, but she's still a really viable threat because the N6 both hit grounded. She has good gim potential off stage and edge guarding with her SIGs. The weapons are flexible. Nothing wrong with Val. It's just that her weapons are kind of out of meta, so to speak. If they were more meta, then Val would be up there. The sword downlight buff really helped though. So Val's starting to creep up the tier list now. Okay, more onto the sword characters. We got Hattori. Hattori's just hampered by mediocre strength and defense, but other than that, she's really solid. I consider her to be up there with Ezio. Yep. Like, all you have to do is play neutral better, and then you're guaranteed to win with Hattori. But if you need to rely on like comeback potential, you're not getting it with Hattori. Okay. Koji. I consider Koji to be a more forgiving Diana, but at the same time, Sword and Bow are in a good spot right now, and the signatures are pretty solid. So I put Koji above Bodvar, above Val, behind Red Raptor because Red Raptor has more maneuverability. So there we go. Yeah, Koji just has the dex going against him, but other than that, perfect legend. Like, the dex holds him back so hard. That's all I'm gonna say. And Wushang has a lot of dex, but if you're going for downlight Saron Goblins, that could be helpful. Wushang's been nerfed quite a bit throughout the recent patches, though, so that's kind of an issue. I'd put him in between Val and Koji. Wushang is solid, but he's just been nerfed quite a bit, and that's pretty much, holding him back along with the dex, and that's it. Okay, Nash. Nash is a sleeper pick. Tons of strength on weapons that benefit from strength. Low dex. What more could you ask for? Honestly, there's not much you can ask for Nash. He's just that good. But he's sluggish if you miss. Nash is an excellent character, but I can't put him any higher. I'm kind of biased here because I've been picking up Nash more recently, and I find that Nash's biggest weakness is that if you miss an attack and you can't guarantee that you're not going to get punished, you might get cooked if you have bad dodging habits. But other than that, I consider Nash to be up there with the best characters. Possibly even better than Kaya because you can adapt your stats to whatever situation you're going up to. Like, you can opt for defense stance on Nash and then you live and hit hard. Or you can opt for strength stance and just hit hard and still have 5 defense to live. So there's that. Like, the weapons complement each other well too. Like, hammer confirms, spear builds up damage, and being stuck on either isn't too bad as long as you know what you're doing. So yeah, Nash might be my go-to main now. Sorry, Lance. Sorry, Vrax. But I just can't figure out the perfect Lance main. Sorry. Nash looking good this patch. I'll tell you that. Okay. Sir Roland. A Lance. One of those old Lance characters. Honestly, he's really well balanced. He's good at what he does, surviving and being good fundamentally. But he just suffers from mediocre side sigs. That's all I've got to say. And that's the only reason why I have to put him in the lower half of great. It's just the sigs holding him back. Debatable. We'll put him ahead of Caspian, behind Vector, because Vector has better stats. Okay. Okay. Asuri. Asuri's a pretty common character you'll face in ranks and tourneys. Honestly, Asuri hasn't changed all that much, but the sword buff really helped. Katar's is a great weapon. Asuri's just a great all-around aggressive character. I put Asuri above Red Raptor, but below the top of the greats. Just for the sheer fact that you may not need that dex after all, but it's good to have that dex if you need to. And the sigs on a Suri sword hit so hard. And we all know how reliable her guitar sigs are too. So there's that. Lucian, honestly, Lucian is amazing all around. His only weakness is that he has low strength, which means it can be tough to confirm kills and tough to get comebacks. But his sigs are just so good, and otherwise his stats are good, and his weapon combination is good. He's just held back, but he has low strength on blasters, and that's literally it. Yeah, I'd put Lucian above Reno, but he's definitely a good pick. Okay, Thatch. Okay, we got the opposite problem of Lucian. He's got high strength blasters, which is really good, but he has low defense, and that's a problem in of itself. But if you can maneuver with Thatch, you're gonna get good kills and good damage buildup. But you don't have as nearly as many gimmicks to take advantage of besides the cannonballs. And the cannonballs are to be expected because they're slow on stage, so you're really only using it off stage or as an edge guard. So yeah, I'd put Thatch. Honestly, high strength blasters is still a boon to blasters. So I would just put Thatch ahead of Ada. Only because Thatch is just better for blasters compared to Ada. That's literally it. Okay, Artemis. I did spend quite a few seasons maining Artemis in the past, but I've kind of given up on Artemis just for the sole fact that the signatures like Orion are rather telegraphed. That's literally it. Aside from that, Artemis is a good pick if you know both weapons in and out well because you got a flexible kit. A flexible, albeit telegraphed kit. And side sig on Lance is a menace. Don't forget that. And likewise, side light and sig on both weapons is unjumpable. Right below Orion, just for the sole fact that Orion has more flexible stances. Actually, above Orion, you can go 9 speed. And 9 speed on those weapons is amazing for clips. Which leaves us with our final legend, the Scarlet. The Scarlet that we've stuck with since the beginning. Where will she go? Honestly, Scarlet is looking okay this patch because Lance is honestly surprisingly buffed, but not buffed to the point where it's good, just buffed to where it's dependable. Hammer is still dependable, even though it got nerfed. But having them together is so... Having Lance and Hammer together is not that great if you can't deal with anti-airs very well. Scarlet has a great anti-air on Hammer, but not for Lance. But if you like to play Lance, and you find yourself stacked with your opponent often, Scarlet is for you because all of her Lance sigs hit stacked and they hit hard. So if you can work around that nuanced playstyle, Scarlet can thrive. But if you're not finding yourself up into your opponent's face when you're playing Lance, then Scarlet's outclassed. Not to mention the fact that N-Sig on both weapons hits grounded too. Okay. Yeah, I just put Scarlet. Yeah, I put Scarlet above Olgrim because she surprisingly has more depth than Olgrim. But that's probably it. So, as you can see, there is no near perfect character because I cannot find a character that is needlessly broken this patch. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list and all of my explanations. I need to go get a drink. Have a good one, everyone.